Welcome to Shardcast, the Brandon Sanderson podcast. We're a bunch of mega fans giving you the news, discussion, and of course, a lot of opinions about Brandon's works in the Cosmere. I'm Eric, and joining me is Evgeni.
Hi, my name is Jerick.
Because you're wearing dark clothes.
Because I am Mary Stew.
I think it's Gary Stew. I think, yeah.
No, my name is Argent.
Also, with an Antony. The fake beard things? No, not fake beard. Okay. Is David? Sorry, that's the joke that I was going for.
Is that I absolutely hated that aspect of the book. I was like, why do people wearing fake beards around? This is so silly. Every time you
have a beard now, is what I'm saying. Yeah.
Just a little bit of one. But does that mean I get to be Topaz though? If you're Jerick, because that's a much better character to be.
I picked the worst character. So that's the competition we're playing.
Okay.
Heck yeah. Okay. And I am Windrunner.
Yes. Also joining us is AonEne.
Hello. I guess I'll be Johan, awkward guy in the back who's probably neurodivergent coded, but I don't know if Brandon realized that.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And I am Cass, and today, everyone, we are talking about Dragonsteel Prime. We had enough cast members actually read the book, so we can do a podcast on it. And I believe some people read it very recently.
It's fresh.
It's fresh. Oh, it's fresh. We're ready to go here. And AonEne, I know you've read this book long ago. And yes. I've read this book even much longer ago than that. I've read this a long time ago.
I read this book twice. Well, I read it once, and then I kind of read half of it once, and then I reread it again more recently.
Gotcha.
It's a weird story in the middle.
Yes.
Or not. It's a weird story of how I read half of it. Anyway.
Yes. And I read it like at least 10 years ago at this stage, long time ago. So I haven't reread it until now. And oh man, I've said on the podcast my spoiler-free feels on Dragonsteel Prime. But let's hear what the two people who haven't read Dragonsteel Prime. We should say spoiler policy is everything Cosmere except Wind and True stuff, right? So I think that's probably what we want to do.
I think that's
yeah. Just because we might do like random Cosmere stuff. I don't know. That's a Shardcast. I don't know what we're gonna do, guys. So.
I suspect we'll touch on like some Stormlight stuff, maybe some Mistborn stuff.
Yeah, you think there's gonna be some Stormlight stuff?
Yeah,
I can't tell where the Stormlight stuff comes in. So what did you guys think of Dragonsteel Prime?
Oh man, I see what Brandon was trying to do, and I am glad this book did not get published.
Yeah.
It is, it's not I'm not gonna call it a bad book, but it's if this had been his first published book, I don't think his career would have taken off.
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah,
unless somehow he managed to score the Wheel of Time again, but.
I don't know if Harriet would have hired him based off of this.
Based off of this one, yeah.
It was off of Mistborn either way, I think, wasn't it? Not only
it was off of
yeah, for sure.
But yeah, it's very like, and it has been fascinating to see like seeds of other Cosmere stories or elements of world building just show up here and there in Dragonsteel Prime. But as a story, and I said this on the pre-show. There's no pre-show. We just hang out and talk.
Yes. And we allegedly prep a outline, which was just us talking.
We put in non-zero number of bytes in the document.
True. That's true.
It feels like Dragonsteel Prime is 3 books that are vying for space for 2 books, and they got printed in one. And so neither one of the three ever gets a chance to like fully get developed and fully get explored. And they're under all sorts of constraints. And it's a solid meh is where I am with this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. I would say there are things in this book that I thought were really fun. Like there were plots that I enjoyed. I really enjoyed when they were all in school. I enjoyed the contours of the bet, even though it's maybe like a little of an odd like plot choice. But I enjoyed Jerick's time there and that part of the story. Obviously, the Way of Kings section was just like, it's not going to be that enjoyable because you've read a better version of this story that was told over the course of a whole book instead of the course of 10 chapters.
Yeah.
I really liked the Topaz stuff. I thought that was mostly, for the most part, fun and like kind of Brandon playing with some ideas you'll see elsewhere. It mostly reminded me of, if you've read Aether of Night, like a very similar vibe in that Brandon's clearly playing with a lot of the same things. He's trying to do this sort of like epic scope of the world where there's all these peoples and all this, this mythology that's kind of being pulled together, and just like a real mishmash of elements that you're going to see elsewhere and ideas that you're going to see elsewhere.
And having reread this, I was like, oh man, there's definitely things I quite enjoyed, but the book does not come together. And then I was talking with Loose Terran Telescope. You may have heard of him from many places.
Friend
in
of the channel.
Friend of the channel, staff member and frequent wob getter. That this is Brandon's 7th book. He wrote it after Elantris. And I think we went through that this was like his first big epic fantasy. And I think that shows. I do want to cut it quite a bit of slack where he's like, it's very hard to do these big ambitious books. Yeah. And so like clearly it has a massive scope, and he's like lots of cultures, lots of mythology and religion. Honestly, there's actually a really good weight of history in this that actually I think is done pretty well. But just plot wise, this is what is going on, guys? Like this is kind of a little all over the place.
This book is a trash fire. It is a dumpster fire, and I love this book for that because it's terrible, but it's so bad. It's good in many ways, and I love reading it and being like, this nonsense. Oh, my good friend.
It is fun. I think that another thing to remember too is that this book is unpublished, so it never got that final revision. Like it never kind of got the polish up that Elantris got when it was bought. Where Brandon made it like edits to the ending. And so I think that if this book had come to fruition, there probably would have been some cuts and there would have been some polishing that would have made it a more successful book. But when you like think about Brandon's early books, like Elantris, basically all set in a single city. Mistborn, always basically all set in a single city. True. He always talks about how writing The Wheel of Time was kind of like doing reps and kind of exercising the muscles that would let him write The Way of Kings. And I think that's really apparent. Like having read this book, you're like, oh yeah, you definitely got better at a lot of these plot elements, and making a world feel more real.
I do think, however, that like the weight of the weight of the world is something that didn't work out for me. That I like what Brandon was trying to do here.
Good old Brian Sanderson,
Brian Sanders,
the person who's doing The Wheel of Time, of course. Brian Sanderson. Yeah. That's a Wheel of Time era meme, guys, of where he got it. Everyone got his name wrong.
There was too much. Like he clearly had done a ton of world building behind the scenes, and so he was using every opportunity to like info dump, weird names and cities and places and cultures and historical figures and all of these things, which did get overwhelming essentially all of the time, especially considering that a lot of these names showed up like once and had no relevance, but they're like, oh yeah, so we're gonna go to Lacton, which is gonna be the capital city where we spend a lot of time.
Sure.
But on the way there, we're going to name like half a dozen rivers and cities and villages that have no relevance whatsoever. But they are going to like
sounds like Lord of the Rings to me.
Yeah, but Lord of the Rings is good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Just a little meme where I'm like, I put down a book after like, oh my god, another named hill that is not on this map. Are you kidding me? High school me, I'm like, I'm done. I'm just done.
And so it has been interesting to like read Dragonsteel Prime and think back to like The Way of Kings, which was Brandon's real first like published epic fantasy, and go, oh, okay, he learned how to tone this down so that there is still this weight of the world that we are seeing, and it feels like there is all of this world building that is done, and maybe it is done, but we don't get to see like it is paced more manageably.
I mean, even between this and Mistborn, right? He wrote White Sand, also set in a single city. Aether, Mistborn Prime, Final Empire Prime, Mythwalker. I think there's others. So like, oh, and then there's like Way of Kings Prime, another big epic fantasy. And then he wrote Mistborn, and then like wrote the whole trilogy, Alcatraz, Wheel of Time stuff, and then Way of Kings. So it's like, yeah, he wrote a lot of books since then. So it's like, true. Oh yeah, we can tell the difference here pretty obviously. Yeah. So yeah, I think one thing that I noticed that got more and more frustrating for me was just how telly this book is, rather than showing things where they're just like, yep, this is a fact, and that's a thing that is there, and yep, we are going to tell you what happened in the months that happened off screen, and we're spending lots of time recapping what you did not see. Like, it's shocking how much they talk about Jerick's relationship with Corteth, with them having like no dialogue until like one scene where we do. It's like, wow. And like, I get the vibe he's going for, and it's just the scope, right? Brandon needs to get to so many places that like we can't like really spend time to really develop these characters. But it was really funny when we got to the Shattered Plains and Sharn, and it's like, oh, Jerick had such good camaraderie with the Zai. I'm like, oh my god, are you kidding me? Just like totally done off screen. It's like that was when it was really apparent.
Yeah,
I'll get into this more later.
Yeah,
but that also when Ryalla was like, you know what? After all of this time, I see Corteth as a sister, and she's really all I had, and we're so close. Yeah. And she cares, like she really misses me and cares about me, and I'm like, girl, what are you talking about?
You need scenes to like develop the thing and then like have that be the realization at the end, and like that's a fine concept, like, right? Yeah,
she almost killed you. She almost killed you.
It's it's not Stockholm syndrome, but it's like, oh, this is the only person that, or one of the very few people that she's ever had like any kind of relationship with, and so it gets
that's not like you can do it better. That's not grounded. It's not what Brandon is.
I don't. Yeah, maybe.
That's what he was trying to put across, I think, but he was not succeeding, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But I can rant about Ryalla for a long time later.
We will.
General.
Like, there's just so many things like that where I can tell the concept that he's going for, and it's not necessarily done well. And I would agree. Yeah. Like you could make a good arc with Ryalla and Corteth and stuff, and like do that
theoretically.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yes, yeah, absolutely. Totally in theory. Yeah, absolutely.
I do confess that sometimes I read the spiritual ideal of a book instead of the book that actually is.
You do a little bit with this, the spiritual ideal of the book. Lots of romantics in this book. Let me tell you, when I read it a decade ago, there was lots of spicy stuff, but now like it's all in the books now. Yeah. It's like, whatever. Like there's nothing interesting in it now.
There's a couple of like things that we haven't seen in the Cosmere, and maybe we never will, like the idea of like cognitive ripples and stuff like that.
We'll talk about the magic.
Yeah, we'll talk about it in the magic. You know what else I found really annoying?
What's that?
All the dialogue tags.
Like he protested, he exclaimed, yes. That's early Brandon for sure.
Using multiple in a single go of
just
dialogue.
all of the time. It is only two people in a conversation, and every line is he verbed and then she also verbed, and then he went to a different. I mean, it's like
you can't use said. I mean, like. Long ago, when I was in high school, that's what people said. Like teachers would say, is bad. It's bad. It's bad advice. You shouldn't do that.
Yeah, I just edit those out mentally in the same way I do said. I literally don't even notice them. Like it doesn't like snag on my consciousness at all.
I didn't notice it until probably like halfway through the book. I'm like, oh no, Brandon does this all the time. I did.
I'd look at it, I'd be like, oh, there is like another one of those dialogue tags. But like as I was going, it didn't stick out to me. I did think on the subject of the Three Realms, it's mostly interesting to have this stuff in here as a marker of when Brandon had it developed. In his mind, where he's like, okay, he's talked about this as being a book where he's done a lot of the world building of the Cosmere kind of realmatically, and you can see that on screen.
And it's interesting. I think the magic stuff is more interesting because we've read other Cosmere things that rather than by itself, because if I'm reading this where it's like, oh, there's the 4 elements, and it's like, well, and like we get away from the 4 elements to deal with like atomic stuff, which is kind of cool. That is kind of cool for sure. And like the light weaving stuff, honestly, some great light weaving descriptions with Ryalla. Like I thought that was quite good. She freaking laser beams a guy to death, which I did not remember that. That's amazing. Like, where's our Shalon laser beams, guys?
I know. Well, I always kind of poo-pooed people asking about that, where I was like, yeah, I guess, like, one of those corner cases. And I'm like, oh, well, maybe Brandon was going down this path a little bit, like he did have this in mind for light weaving. I was the one who was off base.
It's like they're getting it from somewhere. It's like, hey, could Shalon do that? Yeah.
I know. Well, that is the question. I'm like, were these mostly readers of Dragonsteel, or was it people who were just like... There have been a lot
of people getting this via interlibrary loan. I bet BYU is probably super thrilled that they won't have to do that anymore.
Honestly, probably.
I did find it interesting that the magic system is this like weird mixture of a hard and soft magic, in that it has very specific rules in that, hey, you are manipulating you're manipulating atoms essentially, even as Frost indicates, subatomic particles. But the way you are manipulating them is you can have them do whatever you want. And so it's this like, it's soft in that way.
I think it's more vague because our characters know so little about microkinesis. Right. Like Jerick doesn't know what he's doing with microkinesis because Frost won't tell him anything useful, which shout out to literal Frost POVs, which I did not remember at all. Like we get Hoid POVs, we get Frost POVs. And honestly, I love Frost POVs. Like the one where Frost's like, it would be so annoying to not be in his POV when he's like, I could rationalize translating this. It's like, it's actually fun in Frost POVs where if you're not in Frost POV, you're like, I'm going to kill Frost, But like Jerick doesn't know what he's doing. Like he destroyed those arrows one time on a bridge run, right? And Ryalla doesn't really.
Hoid knows some of what he's doing, and he's still figuring it out on his own, but like he knows what he's doing, and he has his specialty, and he struggles to do other stuff, but he does seem to manage to do a lot of other stuff at like a small level, but like a wide variety of things. Like he's lighting candles, making light shine. There was he did some destruction thing that wasn't very much.
When they escape from that one,
moves the oxygen. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, jeez.
Yeah, he does a little bit. He does a little bit of stuff outside his purview that that's like mostly growing plants. It would seem.
It's not like hard domains. Yeah, they can do those. Oh man, that That was so funny when he was using to light the candle, because I'm like, what are we doing with this Horror Watcher point of view? I was like, what is the POV switching in this book is crazy.
Oh my god, so many just random ass POVs.
And admittedly, there's sometimes where it worked really well, where like the first Martis one, I'm like, oh my god, we're in Martis's head, and then we basically have Proto Straff here with us Strafen.
Oh, huh.
Yeah.
You know, like I mean, not exactly, but like there's definitely some vibes, right?
I went to Lynn with that one.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Ben.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so seeing Martis, I'm like, okay. But then like Joharn was a highlight of just like a few POVs where it like totally recontextualizes how he does things. So that was done really well. But then there's just like Horror Watcher POV where I didn't know where we were going, but then it's like, oh, okay, it's like, okay, this is great. I love this. But it's all
I
over the
legitimately
place.
thought it was Jerick for a second. I was like, what move is he making? And then
I was like, Brandon, what are you doing here? Okay, yeah, sure, it's a common name. Why would you that's just confusing to the reader.
And it's like, okay. It's Hoyd being like, oh, okay, everything's forgiven. Like, got it.
Yeah. The Joharn POV came at the perfect time where I was starting to go a little crazy, like, what is up with this guy?
Yeah,
and then I was like, oh, yeah, there's the answer. Okay, that's not at all. And he was like thinking, and Jerick is one of my best friends that I've never talked to.
Sad. It was legit like, the imposter syndrome so high. Like, I don't know. I think that's one thing. Maybe it says that about me, where like give a character with a lot of imposter syndrome, and I'm in, guys. Like that's relatable to me. But yeah, we're just all over the place. Like Brandon, no POVs off limits. We're gonna do anything. We're gonna get to the Shattered Plains. We're gonna meet fake Sadius immediately. POV. We're gonna send him to Bridge 4. I'm like, oh, interesting. Got it.
Well, and it was interesting too. I noticed they were often the fourth bridge in this, and I was like, weird, you know.
That's sometimes also called Bridge 4.
No, it is. Yeah, absolutely.
No, I just said often.
Yeah. They do both.
Yeah,
but it's weird that being an airship. You know, it's like, oh, fourth bridge and Bridge 4 different in Stormlight. Yeah.
But no other bridge is numbered. It is just Bridge 4.
Well, to be fair, I hate the other bridges. I'm always like, I don't remember anything about you, Bridge 13. Like, I'm not going to bother to keep track.
They become Taft's people.
Well, not anymore.
Well,
yeah. So I don't know. It obviously bit off way too much than it could chew.
Yeah.
Right. And it's really reading the Shattered Plains stuff. You can tell that there are some cool concepts. And I can tell that it's cool because Brandon made it cool in a later book.
Because we've seen the cool version.
Made it so cool. Like, it was bonkers to me, just the Battle of the Tower substitute, where it's like, oh, we gotta save the thing. And just how much of a difference it makes Kaladin just hating all the nobility, where like he doesn't want to have to do this, whereas Jerick's just like, I'm a good guy, I'm gonna go rescue the guys. Well, it's just a little different tonally here.
Well, I will say
build up. You know, it's not like, oh, it's happening nearby, you know, like instead of being out there and being involved in a betrayal, it's just like, oh, they're getting killed over there, we should do something, you know, like
oh, they're getting killed.
I will say I think the illusions in this one were a cooler addition that the Shattered Plains didn't have, like the way that they had to like figure out the boulders for the magicians. And how everyone had mentioned the rocks being the same, and then just defeating the illusions variously.
That's cool.
That was cool. I will give them that.
I think I'm driven a little insane by Jerick noticing things, and like man, like I don't actually hate Jerick as a character, but he's really good at things, and we're often told this off screen, which is more annoying. And I think, he doesn't
he's
have
the protagonist.
He doesn't have a really like strong goal. Like, you know, he's kind of like, he gets picked up and they're like, "You're gonna do this bet," and he's like, "I guess I will." And, you know,
I'm the protagonist. Sure.
He's kind of about Cortith the whole time, and then he leaves and is like decides that he doesn't care about Cortith at all. You know, I at least you had a goal, and now you're just out here like, I guess I'm a soldier now. You know,
but he kind of figures. I mean, he doesn't figure out that she sucks, but at one point he's like, "Oh, I never actually cared about her. Like I was infatuated, and I never knew anything about her in the same way that I knew about Ryalla."
Oh no!
And then just
remember
move
any
on.
of her personality.
Yeah, which was fine. Like I'm glad he had that acknowledgement. You know, I would have loved for him to realize that that she tried to murder her slave son. Not I never knew her. You know, that's just a little bit of a difference.
Don't you realize, David? She didn't try to murder her. It was all on Ryalla for going in there. Like Ryalla went into the lake on her own. That was totally her own fault.
Yeah,
I forgot about that part.
That was an intense scene, by the way. That was one of the highlights of the book. Like really, really good scene there. Yeah, like holy crap!
Use that scene somewhere else. Like I was in it. That was so cool. Hoyd showing up.
Yeah,
like,
man.
I mean, you cannot.
Incredible.
You like there are. Like there are, now that we've seen a bunch of Cosmere, there are certain like types of scenes that Brandon uses very sparingly because they are really, really cool. Like the descriptions of shards is something that is really rare, but
sure.
because it is so rare and because he really goes hard on that, they are so much more valuable and interesting. Characters like Hoyd, who never go ham, going ham.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, this is like, yeah.
This was the book that made me love Hoyd.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, it's interesting at the acknowledgements. Brandon's like, "Oh, Hoyd's a bit different." I'm like, I don't know. He seems pretty similar to me, but okay. Like,
he's a little more like jokery.
Yeah,
in this.
yeah. Oh, yeah. But. With Jerick, what is going on with this guy's arc, man? Like we go through the end of he loses at the end of part 2 and is like, I'm out of here. I'm going to the Shattered Plains. I'm like, oh, okay, man, this seems like an overreaction. And every character is like, this is an overreaction. Frost, you gotta go. You gotta go over there. And it's just like, oh my God, you're such an idiot, Jerick. And then he becomes awesome general who's about to literally command the entire Eternal War. And so like we think that there's like this arc, but then no, he's just an idiot again and just misses the entire climax of the book to go to his are amnesia plots just by default terrible? I think they are. And I think one of the only ones that I can remember is good is Downar's. Downar was a good amnesia plot.
It was fine. It came after Shallan's amnesia plot, so I was already like, we're doing this again.
Okay, fair enough.
I thought he got a lot better by Shallan than he did with Jerick.
Well, the thing with Jerick, frustrating. Okay, Brandon is never allowed to use "I killed my parent" as a reveal ever again because I've read it too many times now. Like that doesn't happen that often, Brandon. Honestly,
stop having people secretly kill their parents, secretly kill their wives.
Sisters. Yeah.
There are other character conflicts and I accidentally killed my loved one, and so that was a thought that I had.
You know, maybe this is the first one he came up with, though.
It could be, but then I was just like, what does this mean? Like to me, like what does this mean for Jerick that he accidentally killed his father? And I'm just like, I don't even know. You know, like it's not. It's just like a horrible thing that he refused to know, and now we're here.
And now he needs to put on a dark uniform, a black uniform, and go off into the sequel being mopey again. I'm just like, what is this arc? Like, it's infuriating.
For his character, it's just like things happening to him or him doing things, and there's no actual
character
through line of him and his personality. And
no, not at all. It's
I mean, his personality is protagonist.
Yes.
Yeah.
Idiot teen. Yeah. Jesus.
Well, and I kept waiting for him to get like the other half of his mark carved.
Yeah.
And I guess that's just a book 2 thing. I was like, at some point, somebody's going to do it, you know?
I don't remember what conception this was in 1999, Brandon. Because if I remember, when he redid this to Lyre of Partenel, which basically no one's read except the sample chapters because it was bad and he was making it like first person Hoyd and things. Brandon was going to have 2 books and then the sequence of like the main Dragonsteel stuff,
which is going to be 5 books.
It's going to be 5 books. So it was going to be 7 books. It was going to be
7 total.
It was going to be 7 books. So I don't exactly remember how many books this was going to be. I don't think it was going to be a trilogy. I think it's going to be a big series. So
it's going to be 5 books. I'm 90% sure.
Yeah, I feel like it's 5 books, but I couldn't tell if I was remembering that other thing. But yeah, you know, maybe that's going to be a book 5 thing where he gets to the end of that cast mark, David. Like,
yeah, I really liked his early stuff with his family. Like that, I really enjoyed. Like the concept of his dad kind of saving up for that book, you know.
Okay.
And there was some interesting stuff about how important like literacy is in this book, I thought, which I hadn't really seen. You know, like we've never had a Brandon, or at least rarely had a Brandon character aside from I guess Vin, who is like desperately poor, you know.
Yeah,
it was like
I guess that's true.
It was kind of a little bit different, you know, which I enjoyed.
We do usually have the important, powerful people generally. Yeah,
and even like Kaladin, who's a commoner, is like the light eyes of commoners, you know.
Yeah. I think I just got distracted in the early chapters with them calling nobles nables and the accents that I think I just blacked out like Jerick. I didn't mind Batchor's accent, but the commoner accent like really got me. Although it was really funny that Terrell, the master, he came back with an accent. I thought that was actually pretty funny. So like Brandon's clearly using it intentionally, but it's still like a little yikes at the beginning. I was like, oh man, this is rough. But he's clearly doing it intentionally and like playing with it. And, you know, it was like, oh, there's a vowel shift. I'm like, okay, that's okay. Interesting, I guess.
I did struggle with Batchor. I didn't. He was weird in a couple ways, but the accent was one of them.
Yeah.
It felt like borderline. I don't know.
Well, I think that is the problem when you write out an accent, that it can feel like a stereotype, right? Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also like not necessarily realistic in the way that like his accent was all of his E sounds are going to be extra long, and that's not how that works. I feel like
that's how it works here.
That's how it works here. Yeah.
Look, if Elantris can have diphthongs as the main element, like the core things, rather than the original sounds, like Alex says, then you know we can just make some vowels longer here, guys. That's what we're doing.
It is one of those things where you can see that Brandon had like an interest in like kind of like language early on, and then he sort of like dialed that back in later books, which I mean, he's not Tolkien, so I don't think we're really losing anything in terms of the language smithing. But
he definitely enjoys linguistic elements. Like I think in Stormlight you can tell of just like the evolution of glyphs and like how we have those sorts of things explained and stuff. He does find that interesting, but yeah, he's not a linguist like Tolkien. Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's one of those things where Brandon's, I'm going to learn 80% of a thing and then let, the other 20% be taken care of by an expert, or, just fake it. That doesn't work for you have to, your 80% target has to be way lower when you were dealing with languages. Otherwise it just becomes, because, for things like history and culture and things like that, we can accept a lot of weirdness, but language is a part of our, everyday life in a way that historical knowledge is not. And so I think we are a lot more sensitive to when something is wrong with the language. And so you gotta, I do think that like Stormlight does a reasonable job with, it's not great, but it's a, because it's not trying to invent so much stuff.
Yeah.
It's more believable that way.
It doesn't draw as much attention to itself either. Some of the, we were discussing earlier, like some of the Shodel names being just like four short syllables is like the sort of thing that like, you just learn as a writer. They're like, that's not going to work great for a name. Like I should come up with a different sort of name.
It's interesting.
I liked it just as long as they don't use it like for anything too common, I guess. But I liked it as a little bit.
The one Shodel POV that was like 15% nonsense. Like I followed, like I recognized the word for Dragonsteel, and I was like, oh, they need Dragonsteel to make children. I think it's what this is telling me.
Yep.
I was really excited when I recognized that the POV character's name and her father had like the same family name in there. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah, there were too many names for me to notice that there. Yeah. But like the Shodel continent, I always Pony Shodel.
I think so. Pony Shodel is what I would say.
I swap back and forth in my head, admittedly, but I think I tend to go with Pony Shodel first.
It's just weird that it's ponies, I don't know. That's an interesting choice.
I just think of Pokemon before I think of the Pony Island and Pokemon.
Okay. Rather than My Little Pony. Okay, got it. Cool.
Yes.
I like how the scholars
in my mind.
I like how the scholars just like get it wrong. That's like, oh yeah, Pony Shodel, the cognitive realm. I'm like, wait, what? And then it's like realized, like, okay, yeah, okay, that would be insane. So I'm glad that is a misconception.
You can't just walk to the cognitive realm on Yolen.
I mean, there was that thing with like the two realms.
Oh yeah,
like where like two worlds connect.
Like two worlds become one.
Yeah. So like maybe canonically it is kind of like that. Maybe unlike modern Yolen, which that could be cool because Brandon can't use the Shattered Plains anymore, so he's got to make Yolen interesting somehow.
I've always parsed that as like where Fane and like normal life meet. Like that's always been
that could make more sense. But you know what? Yeah,
but no, who's to say things can have double meanings too? Yeah. It's impossible. Yeah. I just parsed it as the Shodel continent every time. I said I was like Shodel continent. There we go.
Yeah. But yeah, the Shodel stuff is like, oh man, these are names for sure. Look, I'm just glad there's less apostrophes. Like Brandon's clearly using some apostrophe stuff here with Kachan stuff. Which I didn't mind. I didn't hate it.
It was fine.
It's fine.
I didn't hate it in Warbreaker either.
No. Yeah. I think Warbreaker did it well.
He buried it a little bit.
Yes.
Sorry, in limited doses.
Yeah.
What's the name? What is the name of the Shodel character we get in the interlude? Do you remember?
Dulen.
Dulen. Okay. I was like, I'm obsessed with like looking for vessels in this, which I don't think actually like based on the timeline. But I'm like, could it be?
I was low key, looking for Gulida. I'm like,
Yeah, that's don't read this if you want to look for those modern Cosmere things, because they will not really be there in this at all. Which is what I've always been saying. It's like, you're looking for Shattering of AonEne stuff. AonEne's not mentioned in the book, other than I guess the father, right?
The father feels like
it's got to be
the father / the one god.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about the mythology. Should we like cruise through like characters maybe a little more officially, because we're weaving.
Yeah, we kind of talked about Jerick already. I feel like we can. Is there anything else you want to say?
I was almost convinced that Jerick's like blanking about his parents was like some Shodel cognitive stuff, but it's like, no, I guess it's just trauma. That's it.
That's just trauma. Yeah, I know.
Regular old trauma.
It when it exits his brain immediately, I just got Evie vibes, from that.
I guess it was more the Shallan stuff.
Yeah.
Which I mean, he did reuse ultimately anyway.
So yeah, I mean, Jerick's here, man. Of course, he's like, going to be the chosen one that Hoyd wants, obviously later. But
yeah, I feel like he got something from that tree. I feel like that's ultimately where whatever special about him came from.
Yep.
That like big Oki claim.
Source of power.
The source of power that the god Dorus is watching.
Yeah, Dorus. Yeah, that was wild. Just that conversation is like, oh, this one character from earlier, he's one of the gods. I'm like, okay, sure.
He never did any. Like, he's not even. There's no foreshadowing of this. He's
there.
The priest who reads them letters and like
he's
what
see, really, what is really
yeah
what
okay.
But I think it also confused me because the Wind and Truth acronym at this stage of just like this is wild, guys. But yeah, I don't know if I have much more to say about Jerick other than this character arc's bonkers, and he is
He's a dumbass. He doesn't notice arms.
Yeah.
He's a dumbass.
I just wish he learned to be less of a dumbass in the first book rather than our mid-book fail, and then he just does the same thing at the end of being an idiot and gets everyone killed.
I think some of the Discern got resurrected by Hoyd's like big moment. It seemed like a few of those guys got back up.
Yeah, sure.
So
then they died again, though.
Oh, did they not? Oh, did they? No,
they were like.
Some did. Some died.
Oh, some were actually like fully.
Yeah. So everyone,
the energy rushing through, and then they started dying again.
No. So everyone got brought back up, but there was one who literally had a sword in him. He just died.
Okay.
He should have pulled that out. He should have pulled that shit out.
Hoyd, you gotta coordinate this.
Yeah. That. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I wish that there'd been a little more Jerick Ryalla stuff. I felt like that was another thing that was underdeveloped. But like they kind of were like, and now we're really fond of each other. And I'm like, that would have been good to have seen.
I have a point on that.
Yeah, go for it.
Sorry, you go.
I'm torn on Jerick and Ryalla because, like, from the get-go, it felt obvious that we were gonna have main male lead and main female lead romance.
He's gotta stop being with loving Cortez to love his true love, Ryalla.
Yeah. And so part of me, especially thinking of this as a series instead of a standalone, appreciates that this didn't happen in book one.
That's fair. That's fair.
But also, the writing on the wall was very prominent for it to not happen in this book. So I'm like, okay, cool.
Jerick can't go back to Melorand. He's got to go. Yeah. God.
Yeah. He kept like almost getting there. Like he'd be like, I didn't even know Cortez.
Yeah.
Not like I knew Ryalla. She was so great. And then he's just kind of like, anyway.
Like
back to being a general.
It would be just so much more interesting in a sequel seeing them together and stuff with like what they've learned. And like obviously that's I think what would happen, right? But, yeah.
And like in addition to them just kind of having a relationship that we didn't really see on screen, like Ryalla keeps talking about like, oh, Jerick is like better than the nobles. He's like he's gaining this self-respect, but he's not this snooty jerk like they all are. But like he's not that great. Like he still like manipulates her and says mean things about her parents to like try and get her to like rouse up and like be more confident in herself and like and to get her to stop calling him master because he's not comfortable with it, which is like fair, but like don't
it's a bit of an asshole move for sure.
Do still have a lot of power over to just be like he doesn't seem to, and he definitely doesn't seem to like care about her comfort and safety. He's so focused on Cortez, but like he never asks her why she's wearing weird clothes. He notices that she's wearing weird clothes, but he never so much as asks like, hey, why are you doing that? He's just like,
oh, that's reality.
That's weird. I don't understand girls. Well, anyway,
it is wild that for most of this that they're like 13 through 16 and they do not sound like it at all. I mean, Jerick is an idiot at very important moments, which feels on brand. So that you got that, but otherwise,
he is a very believable 13-year-old in the mental department.
I think it's just like the dialogue and speech and like the POV doesn't feel like that. But
that's fantasy, you know.
Yeah, but
lots of precocious children. Yeah, but I did think that I'm like, how close can they be if he's never figured out that Quartet is terrible to her? Like, he doesn't know what the single biggest problem in her life. He has no idea.
Also, so I agree 100%. But also, Ryalla stubbornly just goes, "Oh, he would never understand. Therefore, I will not say anything."
Yeah, she's also being a bit of an idiot. But I mean, Ryalla, what a highlight of the book, though. Like, I gotta be honest. Like, Ryalla is one of the best characters here, for sure.
Easily. Yeah. That's my girl.
Yeah.
But I have complaints about her arc.
What?
I will say.
Do you think her not laser beaming someone to death is not a satisfying character arc?
Oh, that was a good moment. I will say her character arc being like her main character arc was like gaining confidence, I guess, and self-respect, and like it was supposed to be like realizing that Quartet can't hurt her if she just ignores her, but like that's so bad because like in the literal sense, in this book, yes, that works. Quartet doesn't come after her, but like that's not how slavery tends to work, Brandon. Like, she is not in a good position. She's in a lot of danger here. Don't tell people that they just need to stand up for themselves, and that will solve, like, that will make their slavery matter less, or like by all rights. No, this is not on you. You being punished is not on you. You going in the lake was not, like, you were the one who literally did it, but logically, it would not have gone well for you if you didn't either. And it's like, stop blaming yourself for this, because it's, no.
Well, and I think,
and then stop being like there is to some extent, like, yes, when you only know one person particularly closely for the majority of your life, even if that person is like your abuser, like, yes, you're going to have an attachment to them. But the way that Ryalla describes it, and also by the time we get to this point when she's talking about this, is like Quartet is like suddenly in just like a really bad state. Oof.
Also in an abusive like, situation. Yeah, right.
It feels like it dismisses how terrible Quartet was, because now Quartet is also being abused, and Ryalla's like, oh, I could have just stood up for myself anyway. It wasn't like really on. And it's like, no, but she still hurt you though, and that still is on her.
Yeah. The class dynamics are problematic. I can see Brandon, like, what Brandon wants is like an arc where Ryalla learns that her internalized, like, oh yeah, it's my fault, the lake, right? Like, that it isn't her fault, like, and I think that's where it needed to go, right? But it didn't really come together that way, right?
Oh, you think Brandon was going to have her internalize that it wasn't her fault?
Well, yeah, and it's because of the because she's just internalized being a slave, that's why she rationalizes it that way, I feel like.
Interesting, because I definitely thought that was like meant to be the moment in her arc where she realizes it was, and that was meant to be the light bulb moment of, now she gets it. I didn't think that there was going to be a moment where she like realizes that she only thinks that because like she's internalized herself as a slave. Like, I thought that was supposed to be the oh, she gets it now moment.
No, I think that was just the internalized slave aspect for like most of the book, and then it just have a traumatic moment, and then I can see why she would rationalize it that way. And part of, like, I don't think the point is, like, at least I don't think the intent is for Brandon to, like, oh yeah, just stand up for yourself. But like, I want Ryalla to understand that, again, it isn't her fault. And so
I want her to understand that too.
So that's where I thought it was going, but it's hard because obviously these character arcs are very fuzzy because this is an earlier Brandon book, right? So it's hard to know like what refined it would be. But yeah, it's
yeah.
Mm-hmm. I was interested in where she was going, like when they kind of had set up Trixandos. Is that how it? I didn't really parse that name.
Yeah.
When they set up Trixandos as like a potential goal for hers, I was like, oh, like this would have been kind of cool to see, you know.
I think she's got to go there. Like we got to go there because we never actually went into Trixandos, right?
We saw Bat Chor get dropped off there. I think.
But we never went inside. So inside, that's a promise for later in the series, right?
Yeah. So no, I definitely felt like that's where she was ultimately going to be heading.
Yeah.
At some point.
Yeah.
I'm interested in her connection to Frost and like what the bond is there.
Yeah, Ian, you have lots of thoughts here.
Yes, my theory has always been that she's related to him in some way and that she's like his daughter or something. I don't know if that's gonna end up going anywhere, but he definitely was watching over her and cared about her.
Yeah.
And there's some interesting stuff about her that isn't quite explained by her light weaving. Like, she has a really good sense of hearing at one point that Jerick's like, I can't hear this at all. Oh, now I can hear. It's really faint. And Ryalla
the footsteps.
Yeah.
And this other point where she like dreams about Jerick and she's like, oh, this must be nightmares because he looks so hurt. But she like dreams that his nose is broken like it actually is.
That seemed like
and it's like a prophetic-ish dream.
That looked like she's looking into the spiritual realm, right? Like that's some of the earliest
It felt very Vorchany, yeah.
Yeah. I think.
And it's a couple of those things. It's like interesting. And then we learned through Brandon just started info dumping about dragons one time. And then we learned that they do actually have a human form as part of their life cycle. So like I would entirely not be surprised if she was a dragon who didn't know that she was a dragon yet.
Yeah.
And I think that would be a cool arc to see if she's still a character these days.
Mm-hmm. That would definitely be interesting. There was one line where I read it and I was like, I didn't know how to take it, where it seemed like she was saying either she wasn't growing much or she was still just kind of small. And I was like, huh.
I took that to malnutrition.
Yeah. Maybe that's all it is. But
she's maybe a secret malnourished dragon, and that's why she hasn't hit dragon puberty yet.
I know. I was just like, huh, like that's, I wasn't 100% sure. But it definitely could be that as well. Although she got super zapped by Hoyt at one point and like got all her teeth back and stuff. So
and all the blemishes on her skin and all of that stuff.
Yeah, he could offer that treatment. That'd be cool. A renewal.
The Topaz spa.
Yeah. Do we want to transition to talking about Topaz, or do we want to have more Ryalla thoughts? Because I think we're going to talk about Topaz for a while. I just have a feeling, maybe.
Potentially. I'm trying to think. Do I have any other Ryalla thoughts?
Ryalla's definitely a thing where Brandon is making a clear effort to write a good female protagonist, I think. And I think she came across well. And I think Jerick is just like too cliched for me to really attach to. You know?
He was very successful in that she's much more interesting than Jerick.
I mean, maybe just every POV character is a little more interesting than Jerick, maybe.
Yeah.
Cathis, though? Cathis?
Well, okay. Look, sometimes Brandon just does random things. I do like how Cathis, with Cathis, I love how he was like, oh yeah, I'm going to be the best horror watcher. And then just the lead horror watcher is like, yeah, we're going to take him for ourselves, please. And that was amazing. I love that.
Just the horror watcher pyramid scheme thing is just insane.
I love that part. And I love that he was betraying someone and had no sense that anybody might do that to him. Like he was just like, I'm screwing this guy over and I'm not worried about it.
But the horror watcher politics was very fun. So
I will do one.
Go for it.
One last Ryalla note. I love the moment where Hoyt's like, what do you think of this book? And she's like, oh yeah, the writing was kind of such and such. And he's like, oh, I meant, what do you think of the content? And she was like, oh, it was okay. Yeah, it made sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And I'm like, I love that moment because sometimes prose is just what you notice about something.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's what it is after Mountain Heart.
It was an interesting contrast with Jerick, who read the same treatise on Axios and was like, "No, that's dumb."
It goes against what's been established by the scholars, you know.
I am a true skeptic now.
I will say the whole like I don't believe in magic thing is like sigh.
At least I am glad that lasted 2 chapters.
Yes, true.
That was a great scene. Like that was really good, where they were like, "Oh, we just like proved to Jerick that magic is real, and we're not going to mess with this anymore." Like he's in.
Yeah,
it's just a weird. Why did we have to do any of that? You know, like Jerick didn't need to become a skeptic. We didn't need to do any of that other than to establish the magic, I guess.
Yeah,
but with Ryalla, I love the scene with Ryalla and the Trex and Dustmaster. The V guy. I don't remember his name. Vendavius, I think. Something like that.
Vendavius.
Yeah.
Vendavius.
Like that was really, really sweet. That like he's like, yeah, I knew it wasn't. I knew. You weren't fooling anyone, but like that was just a really sweet scene because he's obviously struggling with the caste system and like cares about that. So I really like that scene too.
Mm-hmm.
I've thought of another one.
Oh yeah,
sorry.
No, please.
But this is more Ryalla adjacent. This is
okay.
There was a side plot with her brother that didn't go anywhere. He was meeting with a weird group.
True.
Oh yeah.
And it was like, okay, they're setting up that this group is a mysterious. They're gonna do something.
Like, are they the kidnappers, or are they some assassins, or like,
maybe it's like a red herring for the assassins for that stuff? I don't know. I don't know what's going on with that.
Maybe a sequel thing that's like, we finally meet her brother, and there's something mysterious going on.
It's just like, get out, leave. Yeah, nothing.
Maybe they're overthrowing the caste system, and Brandon's just like, that'll happen in book 2. Like, you know,
book 4, this will be there.
Yeah, because anyway.
I think that's one of the things where Brandon's obviously trying to set up for a bigger story, and then there's just things where it just feels like, and that went nowhere. Whereas like Brandon's obviously he's a lot better at it now, right?
Yeah.
So that's important to know.
And you can see, like, if we're like in book 2 or book 3 going to dig into, what is Ryalla's past? What is her connection to Frost? You know, like, you know, that could involve her brother, and that could be, are they really siblings or are they not? You know, like maybe she has a different father than he does, or, you know. But we'll never know, because Brandon will never write it, and because he's forgotten everything about this book. So if you ask him questions, he will go, I kind of remember what my plan was.
I don't even remember the main villain's name.
Yeah.
Which, like, again,
Ryalla had a brother?
Again, to be fair, 1999, he's written a lot of books since then, so that makes sense to me.
And why would you remember that? You know, you're actively trying to throw away stuff that doesn't matter so you can remember what is actually true. Yeah, I would say.
Oh my god. Yes. Yeah.
And he still needs a whole team for that.
I mean, relatable. Topaz, amazing. Obviously, the highlight of the book. Which is good, because if he was bad, then the Cosmere would be in trouble, guys. But turns out he's great, and Brandon knows it, and he's fun. That's great.
He's amazing, and I love him.
I love him.
What I like about him here is that obviously Hoid. Seeing him in published canonical Cosmere, he can a lot of the times feel infallible.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
because we see him very briefly, just kind of here and there. He shows up, he seems to know everything.
Yes,
he disappears, there's never consequences for him. Yes, recent books have started adjusting that a little bit with his blunder in the Rhythm of War epilogue, where he gets bamboozled by the new odium.
Hornswoggled, I believe Brandon said.
Hornswoggled.
Oh my god.
But up until that point, and mostly since that point, he's never really like been surprised or suffered any consequences. And so seeing him here, he's still mostly in control, and he still mostly know everything, but not fully. And we do, you know, he messes up a couple of times. He dies. ish.
That was great to read a decade ago. Let me tell you, I'm like, oh my god, whoa, holy crap, that was crazy.
And there's also kind of the mystery of like he genuinely doesn't know like what he is and where his powers are coming from and what the deal with all of that is.
Wild, considering he still seems to be very old, you know?
Yeah, I mean, he clearly knows that there's like something weird with him, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But he doesn't know what it is. I love the dynamic of him and Frost, where
it's excellent.
It's really good.
Topaz like picks up on the random things that Frost says and pretends he actually knows what they are. And Frost is like, how does he know about these
Like,
things?
I love him just swearing "do Jerick" because Frost said it once.
Yeah, it's like, I have no idea what that means,
but I'm just gonna say it to just troll Frost.
And then in Frost's POV, when he does that, Frost is like, oh, I'm probably one of the only people on the planet that knows what that means.
And then when he's just like, oh yeah, Frost said it, so I figured it must be a bad curse.
Yeah. No, I love Hoyd not having all the answers and like trying to figure it out. Like that was my favorite piece of the whole thing.
Absolutely.
Because he's always so, and very much kind of a Yasna in the Way of Kings type role. Yes. Like
very literally, right?
Yeah. You can see where that plot went for sure. Yeah. But like trying to figure
maybe that's why they got together.
All these
in Brandon's mind that they're doing that. Like I actually had that thought.
This is still canon, and Hoyd had said exactly what like they.
It's like, that's so relatable, yeah.
Intimately,
yes.
He had such good vibes with Frost. I can see why people were shipping them before we got this book. I can only imagine that the ship of Hoyd and Frost must have taken off after this book, because I can see it.
People have to read this book for that ship to be taken off because they read this book.
True. It takes a while. But it's so interesting because Hoyd still is that mentor figure that like we see in the canon books to our canon characters, to Jerick and Ryalla. But at the same time, we get he's trying to solve a thing and it's really important. He knows things, but he doesn't know everything. And it's good. I really...
He's a real person.
He's a real person. Yeah.
It's also a lot more clear that he's got his own thing going on, right? And he stops by Melorand a couple of times, more than a couple of times, but like that's a project for him. And more importantly, it is a side project for him. And he cares about Ryalla, he cares about Jerick, but that's not his goal.
Do you think that this whole Hoyd just randomly disappearing is Brandon looking at Tolkien and how Gandalf vanishes and being like, what's Gandalf doing? No, I'm just going to write the character and we're just going to get his POVs of like what the hell he's doing. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if that's what Brandon's doing. It's like, we got mysterious wizard guy. He's crazy and being like a mentor figure. He's got his side project with, these guys in Melorand, but he's got other stuff going on. I got to go. I got stuff to do.
He's always got stuff to do.
He's got stuff to do. Yeah.
And I mean, it's maybe Brandon has said like at times, like, he changed what Hoyd was doing in Mistborn because of behind the scenes timeline stuff. And I'm like, so you've got an idea of where Hoyd went after the Final Empire,
hope he wrote it down. Didn't lose it.
He wrote it down. He had Karen. He had Peter keeping an eye on timeline stuff by then at least. I don't know if Karen was involved yet.
Not in Era 1.
No, but this is Mistborn Secret History when he made the change. It was much later.
Okay, maybe.
Yeah.
But obviously, it seems to me so there's actually a WAB that was hot off the presses that said. That asked if Hoyd, Jerick, and Ryalla are Dawn Shards, and Brandon said yes to all of them, but back in those days there were 16 Dawn Shards, so it's not as many. I'm like, what? This is insane. But,
that's new.
But I can totally imagine like the moment where Hoyd's like grow, like that could be his Dawn Shard command, right? Like for sure.
I think for sure, yeah.
Yeah, like something like that.
I don't know if it still is today, but like I definitely get the feeling it was then, and I think that's really cool. It's really cool if that's still his Dawn Shard. I like the idea of grow.
Like it was really cool him bursting walls of like, I'm making the mold grow. Like that was kind of cool. I like that. There's some cool magic things. Yeah.
Scary Hoyd moments where he scares Corteth, and I'm just like, okay, I love you forever now.
Mm-hmm. And like even the little stuff, like the plants in his room, like blooming when he comes back into the city.
Like,
that was cute. I like
that's
that.
kind of a
watering
Gandalf
them. I was like, oh, this is so cute. Oh, I love that. And no one goes in there because they're like, this is weird, guys. I can't deal with this weird plant room.
Oh yeah. Oh, and I like that he knew Kai Zern like independently. Like that was a very Hoyd.
Yeah, that's his other side. One of his other 10 side projects. It's like, I gotta see Zern. You know.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
He's essentially a counselor there, right?
Yeah.
Advisor.
Yeah, because his role doesn't appear to be like that of a Jesk. Even if they have that, it's more serious.
I have a hot take, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Jesk in Elantris, there's Jesker, the religion, and the Jeskari mysteries. And so I really wonder, like Elantris was written first. So like this is like definitely proto Cosmere, like Brandon's starting to get the things for that. Like I don't know if Hoyd started the religion Jesker, or if they came, or if this tradition of a Jesk, which obviously Hoyd did not invent here in this, if that is the branch that led to in Elantris this religion of Jesker. But it's just, there's no way that is not intentional, right? 100%.
You can see it.
I don't know. I could see it being unintentional. Brandon just like reusing a word that he likes.
That's been my assumption, that he just like likes the word.
It's a good word.
Yeah, it definitely could be. But you can see also there being like a Jesk that was like the last person telling them about realmatic theory, you know, and like that turning into religion. Because
totally.
there are pretty clear realmatic things going on with the Jesker. Like they've got the concept of the door.
Yeah.
You know.
They definitely know some stuff. So I don't know. I think there's a relationship there. I think it kind of has to there. So
it always comes back to me. I see a lot of people assume that like the human populations we see on these planets like came from like often in migration from Yolen, and I don't know if that's true or not. And so I don't know either. That's always kind of what makes me wonder like how much we can tie these things back. Because
I never know what the hell's
there
going
people on Cell, or did they come after the Shattering? You know,
what even is the Shattering in this book? We'll get there.
Yeah.
Hoyd has his Topaz, and we get no answers whatsoever with it.
Nope.
At all. It's there for sure.
And there's like, I don't know, because he does end up losing the ring, right? He dies and he doesn't have the ring anymore.
Oh, I guess that's true. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Clearly that does not like prevent him from regrowing his head. And so I'm not sure like what the parallel between, obviously Dawn Shard is very different in this version of the book, but like, is it like some power that is inherent and internal to him, and the Topaz, like the ring, amplifies it? Helps him channel it?
I was kind of thinking,
because it glows like it's a magical ring.
Yeah, for sure.
I was thinking that maybe the ring is what he got the power from, in the same way that we like maybe Jerick got his from the tree. You know, it's something that was in there and it's now moved into Hoyd, and so he still has the connection to the ring. Maybe the ring still responds in certain ways, but the power's in him now.
I guess
if that is the case, I don't think he like realized it at first, because he only got scared when the ring got taken off. Like they took off the ring and he was like, "Oh crap!"
Yeah, and if you hadn't been executed before without the ring being on, you wouldn't really know what was going to happen. You know, you'd be like, I guess we see how this goes.
My issue with that is Hoyd seems to be like, what am I? And I'm like, I mean, you found the weird ring. Like, what's the mystery here? Like, the mystery is about the ring. Like, what are you concerned about? Like, seems pretty cut and dry. So I feel like it's maybe more complicated than that, right?
But it definitely has to do with the ring.
It has to do with the ring, for sure. And
like he has to know that much.
And the ring is canon, right? Because that's the first gem, right? Bearer of the first gem, right?
I don't know if we know that it's the first gem, The ring is definitely canon because Brandon mentions that he like based it on a ring of his dad's or that his dad gave to him or something, and that Hoid still has the ring. And Hoid also like mentions naming himself after a stone at one point, so presumably Topaz.
It's got to be Topaz, for sure.
So like, I don't know if it is the first gem. Maybe that seems. It's like I've housed the gem somewhere as safe as my own skin, you could say, something like that. So like. I don't know. Something's clearly going on there. I think it's still canon. I don't know what relation it has to his Dawn Shard, if it has one.
Well, you did conflate the gem with the element, and the element's Slaracium.
Oh no, right. True, yes.
So do
the
note
element,
that.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
that's
got those letters down, guys.
Yeah,
I think it's got to still be the Topaz. I don't know why Endowment would be calling him Bearer of the First Gem when we haven't seen the gem on screen. Like that clearly must be referring to this. I don't know.
I mean, it could be an old title, right? If he was known on Yolen for 200 years as the Bearer of the First Gem, then I'm
just saying the gem is the first. The Topaz is the first gem, right? I think it's got to be.
I think we may know that. Like, I honestly feel like that might be confirmed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that one thing that here we go, is the fact that Hoid has been a Dawn Shard, related in some way to Bearer of the First Gem title. Brandon, yes, indeed. That's not exactly it, but that is a little piece. I think it's just gotta be. Like, that's what it is. And there's also the piece of the letter where they're saying, like, have you given up on the gemstone now that it is dead? Which is kind of like the other kind of interesting aspect of the letter.
Yeah, and he did say that it was a gem that, like, through my, like, whatever Hoid did, it became useless, right? I think Hoid said that. Yeah, Hoid said that. Gem's there. It's canon somewhere. I don't quite know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. When he said he was named after a rock, one that became quite useless for, like, his having worn it or something like that.
Yeah.
Which... To me, if the Dawn Shard was in that ring and it went into him, now it has become useless because he's worn it.
Like the mural.
Well,
so yeah, I think about it like the mural. Honestly,
there's something really interesting because I don't know if you guys remember, but in the Hero of Ages Q&A in 2008.
Okay,
that was a great Q&A.
It was a great Q&A. Yeah. I got some stuff out of there. Brandon's talking about, like, oh yeah, the shards of Aonenalsium and how it interacts with the physical, cognitive, and spiritual realm. And Peter's flipping out, which is hilarious to see. But there's some reference that maybe shards could be in objects. And I think it's like Peter or Tage or something like that. And they thought that Topaz was that it was like there was a shard there. Now, granted, I don't even think shards exist in this currently.
No, I don't think so either.
I don't think so, especially when we have this wob about Aronack, which we're going to talk about, of course. So it's just like it's very possible that the Dawn Shard is in there, in that ring, right? I just don't understand why it would be useless. Like, I guess it just comes to, like, the same thing with Sunlit Man. What's the relationship with Hoid's Dawn Shard and Sigil? And did Sigil give it back to Hoid? Like, what is going on here? I don't know. It's hard to say, right?
It's very hard to say.
Certainly, we have not seen the gem on screen in canon, right? It's just been mentioned, right? So
we haven't.
Clearly, I wouldn't be surprised if that was the Dawn Shard in this original conception. And, like, what Hoid's thinking is, like, the hell is this ring? Like, I have no idea what this is, where I got it, and gave me these microkinetic powers or something. Like, I don't know. Frost's not telling me.
There is also the moment when Topaz is getting tortured by Orion.
Yeah.
Where he does, like, seem to tap in something deeper within himself.
Yes.
And, like, it's possible that like this changes the ring in some, like, maybe maybe up until that point he was only accessing the Dawn Shard through the Topaz, through the ring, and at that point he, like, merged with it or internalized it or whatever. I don't know if that works, but there is something weird that happened there that like scared Orion away.
It seemed like Aronack wanted the Dawn Shard that Hoid had, right? Like that seemed to be what he was going for. Like with the like
yes, very
for sure.
explicitly. He's like, I want this, give it to me.
Yeah.
Which was interesting because when Hoid gave him like just a little bit of it, he reacted badly.
Well, presumably like he was like using it kind of like a weapon almost.
Yeah.
In a sense, which is interesting. But I guess he didn't know it would act like a weapon. And so, there's mumbo jumbo where you
can only do it once now. And now he's
right.
I can never do that again.
He's not going to be able to slip past that torment anymore.
Yeah, no. But so like presumably it would be like a thing where like if you just like gave it up, then like, then like Aronack just has it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I think was happening. It definitely gives me some like, I imagine a shard. If you knew someone had a Dawn Shard, like, oh, yikes. Like, I bet that would be very similar to like the shard would be very interested in that, right?
Yeah. Well, you see how secretive the Sleepless are with Risen,
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I'm glad that there are only 4 Dawn Shards now. 16 shards and 16 Dawn Shards would have been too much.
Well,
Brandon.
I mean, maybe it's like it would be 16 Dawn Shards and like 5 of these shards? ? Mm-hmm. I don't know.
So there seem to be 5 real gods.
Yeah, but
5 or maybe 6 though. Because I'm like, are any of these guys the betrayer?
We got to talk about the betrayer and like the previous set of like mortals. Like, what is happening here? Like, is this all just made up? I don't understand. It's crazy.
The cosmology is such a question mark for me.
Yeah, so maybe we should cruise through some more characters and we'll get through more magic stuff. I don't know if you have more Hoid stuff that we want to do right now, but I want to get through Frost at least.
He's cool,
sure
I like him.
I did wonder if Hoid was like the trickster god, the Loki parallel.
Sure,
but I don't think that works.
Larry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
that's
could
classic.
be. That didn't seem to be a real one, like you could see him having influenced that. But he also was wondering if the 9 lords were real. So if he was one of the 9 lords, I feel like, he'd be like,
but the other 8 lords, I don't know about them, but I'm definitely the 9th one.
No, but like because he doesn't know what he is, right?
Yeah. Sure.
And so maybe he's like, this god that doesn't know he's a god or whatever. I don't think that's the case. Not the vibe that I got from the book, but like early on when we were just starting to like learn about his quest, I'm like, I wonder, maybe he is the unnamed god or whatever.
That would be a twist, though. The unnamed god was in us all along. I kind of actually love that. That's actually great.
And for the rest of the party, it was the friend that we made along the way.
Yeah, see, it's perfect. Yeah.
But I don't like the rest of the book made me think that he's a separate mystery.
Yeah. Do we have any sense of how old he's supposed to be in this?
It's really unclear. I think. Super unclear.
He doesn't do a lot of reflecting on his past when we're in his POV.
No. It's definitely Brandon's earliest attempt of a character who knows a lot and we're in their POV. And so we really need to make sure we focus on like what they're doing because otherwise they'll give stuff away. But I would say hundreds of years, not thousands of years. That's kind of my vibe. I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely thought he's older than he's supposed to be. Supernaturally sure. Old, but not necessarily.
I didn't think it was like super, super old. Like, maybe even like not even 100 years potentially, where he's just like he's older, but not
a line
crazy
that
amount.
like made it seem like he's older, but it's unclear. Talk about Frost. So upon reread, so Brandon gave out the Dragonsteel sample chapters that were the Shatter Plains arc, which you can also read in a book called The Way of Kings, and much better. I highly recommend it, actually, because it is much better there. And I know people since those were like, is Drefrast Frost? I am certain Drefrast is Frost reading this. Like, there's no way that is not the case, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's a dragon that just let Jerick, let him go. let him go. Like that's gotta be Frost, right? Like what? That doesn't make any other sense.
He shows up, he returns to the Shattered Plains at exactly the same time that Frost does.
Yeah.
And sometimes Frost goes missing from the war camps, but the dragon is out there.
Yeah.
It's just it's
Jerick's like, oh, I feel like I should recognize him.
Right, exactly. Like his eyes seem familiar somehow. That's crazy.
Which I've never seen before.
Yeah, I've met a lot of dragons in my life, of course. Yeah.
That's one thing that like I'm fine Jerick to be like notice like that's really weird. Like I don't even know how to parse this. So like that's fine. So I'm convinced he is Drefrast and that Frost is just like the perturbation of that name that's like shortened to something else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The Korra to Corvelium of Ass.
Yeah.
This is Raphael.
Yeah, right. Love Frost in this book, by the way. Like he's great.
He's just chilling. Guy's just chilling.
And so he took an oath, which is why he can't tell Hoid things, right?
Yes.
I didn't reread the chapter where we're in Frost POV where they're talking about the altar and the 5 gods. I know Frost said that you couldn't imagine like who I like swore this oath to, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Did he mention the father there?
I don't believe so.
I don't think so. He was vague. Yeah.
No.
So I think I could imagine dragons having a similar thing to like Shardic agreements where it's like it would be very bad to break them. Maybe like dragons are so like magical, like that could be the case. But
it's possible.
It definitely seems like
there would be consequences, not necessarily magical consequences.
Yeah. Sure.
Like someone might be really upset with him. Like the gods would be like, hello, excuse me.
I mean, it's got to be the gods or the father, whatever that means, right?
Yeah.
Like, or other dragons. I don't know. The relationship with the dragons in the mythology is also like, I don't know.
I guess he didn't seem that like intimidated by Ethane. So like, or not intimidated, like he didn't seem to regard him as superior. So sure. I maybe it would be the father that he swore the oath to.
Ethane also gets just pummeled into the dust by Jerick.
Yeah, but Jerick's just that good.
Yeah. And Jerick had the Dawn Shard, to be fair, which was enough to scare away other guy. So
yeah. So just to be clear, Ethane's one of the gods who's the Lord of War, which I like in that moment where Frost presumably comes down is like, Ethane, they've done enough. You can let him go. And so like I think that's much more interesting. It's like, why is it a human who's the Lord of War? It's like, oh, it's one of the okay, that's cool. That's cool. I like that. I just forgot the name, even though Batchor, like we got the name and then Batchor read off the name a second time because we found a Dragonsteel thing to get it, right? So I totally didn't notice that, but so that's interesting. But yeah, he didn't seem particularly plussed or nonplussed or whatever that means by Ethane. He's just like a guy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that makes sense. That they're similarly ancient, but not necessarily.
Yeah,
same
caliber type thing, I guess.
It is worth pointing out that the news, whatever
obviously,
the priest was
Dorus, I guess. I'll say Dorus.
Also had sworn an oath. Of non-intervention, seemingly, I guess.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say that Aronack wob, isn't it? That Aronack is kind of getting around some of his oath, like he's breaking an agreement that the others aren't.
Yeah.
Bringing the technology in.
Let's mention that wob.
Sure, so let's read the Aronack wob because this is
we're just talking about the gods now.
Yeah, I mean, this episode's all over the place. Woo-hoo. So,
Process great.
All right, so this is from Rhythm of War previews Q&A. All right, hell yeah. This is the key lore before anyone's really read Dragonsteel, but now you know. So, Gerbil is referring to something Brandon said in this like annotation, because Brandon was doing like annotations as the Rhythm of War sample chapters came out. That was really good. Sad we don't get that here with Wind and Truth. But one kingdom led by a mysterious figure who knew far too much. And then Gerbil asks, did this evolve into or influence Ishar Tesm situation at all? Or maybe the latter is a parody of even that idea. Brandon, the mysterious figure was Aronack, though I don't remember how I spelled it, but we corrected it. One of the original figures planning to kill Aiden Alcium. Back then, before the Cosmere was fully formed, they were demigods, but I later decided it was more interesting for the shards to have been mostly ordinary mortals before the shattering. So he's no longer canon. He was basically breaking the agreement between the others of his kind by giving rapid technological development to his people. This was in part because I was intrigued by the idea of a single highly advanced in technology culture among a group of Bronze Age peoples. An idea you see play out in science fiction with advanced aliens among modern cultures on Earth, but not often in fantasy. And yeah, so obviously there's a Shodel, there's a dragon. Cool. Loose Terran Telescope. Got it. Is Aronack, though not necessarily the same name, still one of the original vessels in the current version of the Cosmere? If so, does he have a different name in the current canon? And Brandon says Rapho. So,
yeah, I do want to provide just a little bit of context to like what Gerbil was it?
Yeah.
Was quoting from the Rhythm of War annotation.
Yeah.
So the Rhythm of War annotation, chapter 9 preview. If anyone wants to go look at what chapter 9 does, but Brandon talks about how I might have mentioned this before, but one of the oldest and eventually discarded scenes I had for this book was Kaladin returning home. It's existed in some form since I was first developing Dragonsteel in my late teens.
That makes sense.
It eventually happened last book, but I gave Kaladin the chance to ruminate on it in this book. The very first version was from Dragonsteel and was supposed to begin the second book, which I never wrote.
Sure.
In that story, most everyone was around the Bronze Age level of technology. And here's the quote. But one kingdom, led by a mysterious figure who knew far too much, was rapidly progressing his people technologically. So the protagonist, after joining his army and fighting on the Shattered Plains with Bridge 4, eventually was to return home in full plate armor to confront the version of Roshon who ruled there.
Oh, that was Strafen. Oh, that's interesting. That's got to be Strafen, right? In the context of this, right?
Because Strafen became, because he goes home in this, or maybe Brandon's forgetting that. Like he does eventually make it home and find it in ruins.
He does make it home in plate.
Yeah,
but I guess not to Lacton, right? He goes to
not to Lacton.
So I guess like he'll go to Lacton and solve the problem with Strafen. I guess that's the first thing he does.
I guess
maybe it's crazy to open with that, but okay.
Because he needs to like get a start for his Cortez quest.
Oh yeah. So here is my conception. So there is the father, and the father's very interesting because it sounds like Aronack is not happy with the father in that conversation with Wat Dorus, right?
Yes.
And like the father's just happy to let all this slaughter and stuff happen. And
so
right?
That seems to be like a god, like perhaps an Adonalsium like god figure, like an not necessarily an absent god, but you know, the god that doesn't take an active part in their creation.
Yeah, and so I think this is the start of Aronack trying to convince the other gods that they need to kill the father, right? Like that's kind of another goal that Aronack's trying to do, right? In a sense.
Yeah, and this is why I get confused. I'm like, okay, has the shattering not happened then?
Yeah, well,
you know, like
when I first read this, I'm like, there's 5? Are they the shards? Because Aronack, like his whole like, oh, we're over in Melorand, and then we come back to Zendor. That feels very much like a shards nexus and stuff, like moving around and can't be everywhere all at once, right? That read really similarly to that.
Mm-hmm. I do think they have a physical form, though. You know, like the Lord of War seem to, you know, like they walk around and look like people. They're not like,
and I mean, like, what is not astral projecting, right?
Yeah. So these must clearly be demigods and like different from the shards we see, but like there's
there's a similar power there for sure.
Yeah. I do think it's more interesting having mortals, but like that's my understanding of what Aronack is trying to do. Like he eventually, maybe the series ends with the gods trying to kill the father, and like that's Brandon's conception of the shattering, I guess. And
they mention that there's a line where they says like, you know, Aronack has destroyed the world once and he's trying to do it again, you know, like that's a line that gets said at one point. The one, I think they don't say Aronack because they're saying Orion, like whoever Orion is, who we learn is Aronack. And so I wonder if
like
that
when Hoyd's confronting, like when Orion's confronting Hoyd. There.
I don't remember the moment it exactly happens in. I can try to find it if we need specific.
Yeah. It could be. I mean, maybe this is important enough for us to take a break, but it could be in the retelling of the story that Hoyd has, like when he drops from the ceiling on the feast.
See, the legends are like totally different from the five gods because the only of the five gods is slowness, right? That's the only one that is in there. So
it overlaps.
Like I definitely
that overlaps directly.
Fair.
Like I definitely think at the very least, Aronack is using this notion of Orion the White and presenting himself like that.
Yeah,
at the very least, he could be the source of that.
He's Zeth is the impression I get in their cosmology.
Sure.
He's the dark one. He's, you know, he's not the betrayer, but he's like he's the guy, like the Lord of Death or whatever. But
he is described as the absence of, like, his power is like he's a little proto-Orium-y in that way.
Yeah, but like no spiritual aspect, but just the absence of it. It's like, wow, that's crazy.
Well, I think Topaz clarifies that there is a spiritual aspect there. Like it's not a complete absence.
But it's like this void idea. Because the spiritual aspect was a void. Yeah.
Yeah. But the other piece of it that I think that fits along with Aronack having destroyed the world before is that's maybe why they've sworn this oath to not use their powers is we already, you know, we destroyed the world. The father says we're not supposed to intervene anymore. So we promise not to do it. And Aronack's kind of chafing at those restraints again.
Yeah. Yeah. That seems really plausible. But it's so interesting that Yvain is like being with the Shodel for some reason. I don't know. Hard to say, but maybe it does seem like the Shodel are in a pretty dire spot, like kind of similar to how in Way of Kings, the Parshendi are like, wow, the Parshendi. But then when we see their POV, they're like, oh, man, we're in a rough spot. And I think that we kind of get a similar vibe here, right?
And there are a lot of parallels between the Shodel here and the Singers.
Yeah.
Both, the idea of like telepathic communication, the way the war is waged on the plains, you know, how they can jump these chasms and the people can need to carry bridges.
Gotta have the war forms jump the chasms. That's critical for this to work.
There was something about like the technology of like the quality of their weapons. They have the Shodel have really good weapons, and that reminded me of obviously the Singers, the listener, the Parshendi themselves don't, but like they have these stashes of like Recreance era weapons.
It makes me think that Yvain, he is definitely restraining himself from his magical powers, but like this is permitted that he can act in this way, but not use his like divine power, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think he's trying to do his best to help the Shodel without doing too much
in these restrictions.
I found the destroy line. It's from the prologue. It doesn't say exactly Aronack, but it's I assume Frost. Is that the dragon in the beginning? Whoever the dragon is in the beginning.
Yeah,
it is Frost. Yes.
Okay. He says he's talking to the Lord of War, and he says, "Your brother worries me." The dragon said, its mental voice laced with concern. He is planning something. He is dangerous. He destroyed the world once. He will try again. Who will resist him when you and the humans in the north have killed one another?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's got to be Frost. Got to be the fifth god. Yeah. Okay, we're getting a picture here. Honestly, the swab is very helpful though, because they're demigods. Okay, great. I don't need to stress about what's a shard or not and how that all works, because that's crazy. It's very interesting.
And I guess maybe Elysium didn't shatter into shards at one point. You know, I mean, maybe they just killed him, and then these were the gods that were left. You know?
Yeah, maybe.
Like maybe that's how it worked.
Yeah,
it's so interesting with Elantris. Like, who knows how much Cosmere stuff was in there? Because certainly the published Elantris, you know, we have these hints of the gods. I mean, vaguely, it's pretty vague.
It's pretty vague. And he's like, I see it in the perpendicularity, but I didn't know what it was for.
Yeah. So it's always hard to say, but it's like, certainly in 2008, Brandon's like, you've seen the influence of Odium, because Odium killed Devotion and Dominion, right?
Yeah. In his mind, was he thinking Aronack killed them at that point? Who can say?
Apparently, that's a theory that Aronack is like proto-race or something.
Proto-race? It's possible. It's possible.
Yeah.
I was looking for him in like the Lords in Lacton.
Sure.
You know, I was like, classic. maybe. I literally can't remember his name.
Mardus?
The Ka Lord.
Mardus or Strafen?
Oh, he didn't have a name besides his house.
Oh, yeah. I forgot. Yeah, they were like, no one remembers his first name, so he's
long forgotten.
Lord.
It's like, okay, sure.
He can't remind. He's forgotten himself. He's just been the Ka Lord so long.
Yeah.
The dragon continued to stare to the south. We cannot live in seclusion, he said. That was never the plan. And my father's plans have worked so well in the past.
And that's the dragon saying that, or the Ethane saying that?
Ethane's saying my father's plans have worked so well in the past.
Okay.
Father is capitalized.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Cool.
Mm-hmm. And there's the other interesting piece of that is it seems like Ethane is kind of confirming that they created the Shodel. Like he's kind of like, these are our children, even if they don't remember that.
Yeah. Go, the Lord of War said bitterly. I will not abandon them. They may have forgotten where they came from, but they are still my children.
Okay, so...
And we do know that in the legends, Zeth the Black created the Shodel. You know, the lore says that he was jealous of Orion's creations and stuff like that. And so he created the Shodel to be these like mockeries of, or he created Fane to be the mockery of the true life.
With 4 arms, which does not come up later. Like, because it's in one of the legends. It's in earlier in the book. And then with Shatterplate's nothing.
And so...
Classic.
Okay, so having read a bunch of Brandon stuff, the Lord of War is going to end up being a good guy.
I mean,
I feel like,
I think he is. Yeah, I think he is a good guy.
And Orion the White is the villain.
Yes.
If Orion the White's even real, like that's kind of what I'm wondering. Is I'm like, is it just Zeth and Orion the White is one of the fake gods that has kind of come into existence?
Well, because doesn't Frost say like Zeth the Black came from like something else, which like almost...
I think he says the betrayer came from something else.
Yeah. So what the hell's going on with the betrayer? That like the betrayer is super weird because it's mentioned. No, Frost says it comes from somewhere else. And 2, that this is consistent all the time. The number of 9 lords, that can be a little different. But the betrayer lore is pervasive. And like Hoyd says it too. So and like, what the hell's a betrayer?
And it's definitely a different figure. The glossary explicitly calls out that it's really bad when you swear by Zeth the Black's name, but no one ever swears by the betrayer's name. Like, that's not...
And the lore, the second time Hoyd tells this story is wild because it's like, originally, there was this original set of humans. And then one of those humans...
and then they were like brilliant and they were so good.
And like super magical is my impression. Like almost like Brandon's doing like, these were the elves, almost. But like they're humans, right? And one of them, Zeth was talking to, and that one gave Orion's power to Zeth.
And that was the betrayer.
And that was the betrayer.
Yeah, you're right. So, that's what it was.
So I wonder, so that was so interesting to me. Like, what is going on here? So I wonder if like in the Yolin's history, there was a set of humans where magic was pervasive because Frost's like, magic's forbidden of humans, right? And so I wonder if there was like one of the earlier spans, I don't know, where there was this set of magical humans and there was a dude, not one of the 5 gods, who was a betrayer who caused a destruction. And then I guess they recreated the world. Maybe that's the current set of humans.
I think that's the sense we're meant to be given. I knowing Brandon, have wondered if like the early set of humans is, you know, like legends get twisted. Either A, they're Shodel, because I think they're supposed to be. I think the humans are. I don't know. I was just like, you know, I wouldn't be shocked if like they were wrong about the Shodel, and the Shodel were the first people after all. Or B, potentially dragons, not in their dragon form. You know, maybe before some sort of change happened to them or whatnot.
But like, I think it would be more likely for the humans to exist. Then we know the demigods created the Shodel. And so maybe it's like a thing where the demigods weren't as powerful. The betrayer who like gave the demigods like an oomph of power, they created the Shodel with that.
I guess possibly.
And then like in some way, Aronack destroyed the world somewhere in here. I don't know. And it just got twisted as to like who Orion is and things like that. I don't know. That's my pitch. I don't know how the dragons fit in with this, but clearly they know what's up.
Maybe Orion is the father. Like that's the other thing. That
Maybe original. I think in the context of that legend of the original humans, I think Orion would be the father, Proto-Adenalcium or whatever. I think it's Adenalcium. But okay, this feels pretty good. You know, a decade ago, I'm like, man, I have no idea what's going on with the mythology. I'm like, I think we got somewhere. I think I kind of understand what's happening, which is insane because this has been confusing me for a very long time, guys. But it's so interesting. I do kind of like the idea that like Adenalcium created a race of like super magical humans, and then it was like, that was a terrible idea, actually. So yeah, we're not doing that again.
Well, and they probably destroyed the world with microkinesis. You know, like I feel like that's the implication.
Ooh, yeah. Sure. Power of gods.
The greater power of the surges. Hello, Ashen.
I mean, I guess from that sense, you can imagine like divine power using microkinesis to like reform these atoms into creations. So like, I like that idea. And then like, you know, they used it less well than the father did, right?
Yeah, I mean, the intent, I think, clearly is that there's only one magic system. There is magic in the world, right? Yes. And it happens to be called microkinesis, but it's magic, right?
Yeah.
And it contains within itself what we and maybe this is still canon. I think it's possible. There was the original magic, like Adenalcium's magic is microkinesis, and then as Adenalcium gets shattered, microkinesis also gets shattered into like all of the different magic systems of the Cosmere.
That's kind of I kind of like that philosophically. That it's like, yeah, this was. I mean, what's magic if not manipulating atoms, right? You know, and like pre-shattering, Hoid could have like a skill, right, in like growth, but can do all of these other things. Whereas like post-shattering, it'd be like, no, you get. I mean, he essentially has progression, right? That's kind of what he has in this.
In this book,
it's
like
and
a
then
more
like
mystical version.
Yeah. All this stuff's ancient mystical stuff. Which honestly, this is going to be. I can imagine a revised version of this where you're like, yeah, but this mythology thing, like, it's more interesting seeing the broken version of magic to see what like it was now, and more inherently more interesting. I think
what it kind of reminded me of was. Like a little bit Kelsey, whenever Kelsey talks about how he has the vision of the gods when he's looking through his like steel sight, you know, like when they can kind of see when they go into their atom vision. I was thinking about that.
Yes.
And B, just like it feels like what the shards do. Like it feels like the magic of the shards where you just have total control over, you were just like reshaping reality to your will.
For
you
sure.
know,
for sure.
If you know, you can do that. And so it really feels, it feels like like the earliest, most basic form of a magic system.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Also, sorry, I had a thought. The dragons have to predate the Shodel, I think, because the Shodel have Dragonsteel in them, right? In their blood. Or in their bones, sorry. Excuse me. And so mythologically, here's what I think happened. The father created humans and dragons and the demigods, the 5 demigods. Okay. And so I think the dragons and demigods, they're like same tier, right? And then there's the super magical humans. Maybe actually they could have all been on the same tier and we just killed all the super magical humans. That's possible, maybe.
And the dragons were wise and they were like, you get to live.
Oh, dude,
you just swear an oath to not talk about what happened.
No. What if, this isn't my idea here, but what if the 5 demigods are just the 5 remaining super magical humans?
I mean, it could
That's
be
possible.
Especially if the betrayer ended up ascending into some sort of godhood, which it seems like potentially could have happened. It's hard to say. They might just be an evil mythological person.
Yeah, that was really influential. But I think then whatever happened, the demigods are creating the Shodel and are like using, like they have to have Dragonsteel to like do that, I think. So the dragons have to predate the Shodel in that case.
I guess. I feel like that it could easily be either way though, because they both need Dragonsteel to live. So it's not like one of them needed to exist before the other.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
I thought the dragons wouldn't work without Dragonsteel either.
That's true.
I mean, it's possible that dragons produce Dragonsteel naturally. They don't need it from the wells.
Oh, I think that is true.
Yeah. I don't even know if they necessarily need it to live.
Yeah, I think they are.
You need your body to live.
Yeah.
It's more just like it exists on both of their bodies, so I don't feel like there's an obvious precursor between the two.
I think,
but I think that in the current Cosmere, almost certainly.
Yeah. I guess I feel like dragons being created directly by AonEne or whatever makes a lot of sense, and they're just super magical, powerful things, right? And the Shodel are magical, but they are not as super magical as that. So like in this tier of like, what did the father make? What did the demigods make? This kind of makes sense to me that like this happened later and they're trying to make something super magical, but they couldn't quite manage to do what the father originally did. And I think that's like plausible
because the Shodel are much more on par with modern humans in like, and I think Frost essentially says as much in that they have a stronger cognitive aspect, but we see a bunch of humans learn to do the same, if not better things than the Shodel magicians. So definitely
it's different, but it really makes me, I do really wonder, can just any human learn to be a Zai? Is this like, could that still be the case? Like, that can't be the case. There's no way that's true in modern Cosmere, right?
It seems like maybe. I mean, like a bit like Che Shan from Electrics, maybe.
It reminded me a lot of Che Shan once I was kind of like, once we got more of it, I was like, I can definitely see this being a reused idea with like the meditation kind of side of it. But they talked about how people have greater variance in their cognitive abilities. Like some are greater than the Shodel and some are like, I have nothing. And so I could see that the Zai are just naturally people who are happen to have like a greater cognitive ability, you know?
I don't know. I think just like Cosmere balance wise, I think there might need to be some Yolish spiritual DNA for that to happen. And you can't just like have anyone do this, you know? Like I don't know. I feel like this would be discovered later. And Che Shan is more like they're meditating to like get power from the door, right? So it's like a different path to some abilities. But
yeah, it needs a power source. You can't just do it.
But this is like proto magical things where magic is magic. It is kind of cool. It is very tropey, but it's kind of cool. Now that you've cast it like that, Argent, I kind of like that.
And I do wonder, like the idea of microkinesis has been either forbidden to humans or humans just haven't had access to it in a very long time. I do obviously, we have examples of Ryalla, Jerick, and Topaz who break that rule. Now maybe they break that rule because of
Dawn Shard.
Because of Dawn Shards. Although we do like Jerick, I think is noted to be able to see Axie before he gets his cast mark.
Yeah, no, there's definitely this aspect where like his noticing things seems like that he's using this like axial vision, like
microkinetic vision. Yeah.
type thing.
Like seeing the winds.
Yeah. I definitely think that's the case.
Although I don't know it came from the cast mark. You know what I mean? Like he knew the tree before his father even told him where it had been carved from. Like he knew that tree.
No, I don't think the cast mark's magical, but I think he got it from that time. Right.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
But I do wonder whether microkinesis is something that is just inherent to but latent in most humans.
Mm-hmm. You need an oomph of power to do it.
Power, training, a jolt, to start the spark, or if it's something that truly is inaccessible to humans. Unless you are one of the 16 people who find the Dawn Shard.
That is interesting because one of the things that surprised me with Horror Watchers is that there is a very slight magical aspect because it's not just waving the Tamukex over. So a lot of people just can't even do that to create the candle, right? So like there is a tiny spark of truth that like they're recruiting people who can do this thing with this candle. So like maybe there is like some latent magic in people, and that's what the Horror Watchers are getting. And obviously the culty aspects are just like whatever. And like they're obviously using this Tamukek to do it. But clearly there is a very tiny spark of magical ability, I think, right? So I kind of like the idea that it's like, yeah, there's magic, but like this is restricted. But if you have like a special Dawn Shard thing, then it's like, yeah, you can get full access to it. You're good. Easy. And maybe just like the super magical humans, they just all had this microkinesis, and maybe not just even a special skill, but just like they could just do the full thing.
Yeah, that's what I was imagining. Like the original humans would all be microkinetic.
Yeah.
Probably not to the level of like Aronack.
No, I think they would still get tired, right? Because there's this aspect of Ryalla, like laser beaming. It's like, well, I feel tired. I can barely manage anything. And so I would
Jerick too.
Yeah, right. Yeah, true. So tropey in this early thing. It's like, yeah, he is the magic. You're tired now. That's fine.
Yeah.
But
it does have at times it does feel very much like an 80s fantasy.
Yeah.
Like I could see the Belgariad poking its nose through this book.
Oh, one thing to note that I wanted to mention earlier is Brandon wrote this when he was 24. So again, like, okay. I did the math
oh my God.
for his age. So it's like, okay.
That is funny to think about.
Yeah.
It's like younger than my little brother.
yeah. Like, I don't know. Yeah. So there's some really interesting ideas. I think we got a good handle on the magic and mythology, guys. I'm shocked that we aren't more bamboozled. Like, I think we got, we're good at reading some clues here, guys. That's good.
Yeah. I have a theory about which god Wat is based on nothing more than vibes.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's Dorus, obviously. No, but like one of the lords.
In the modern pantheon, Eric. Oh my God.
Okay.
I think he's probably, in my mind, kind of the healer scholar god that they think Hoyt is. The one that's the wise.
Yeah.
Sivan.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Sivan. Yeah, the healer. I was thinking that it kind of it made sense to me. You can see people being inspired by multiples. And I had a little theory about because we've got 4 of the 5, right? Like Slanis kind of pops up horrifyingly in some of the Horror Watcher.
Oh yeah, I do want to talk about that a little bit.
I was like, Brandon would never do this now. That was kind of crazy. But
I mean, they are a creepy cult, so it does really fit that vibe, you know. It's like,
but it's not necessary to write that.
Yeah. So
they all died, so you know.
Yeah, that's true. He did burn them all to death, aside from the one that he
nuked them. And Frost's like, I mean, deity, I guess. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, but so I was thinking, we know Ethane is a Lord of War.
Yep.
We've got Darus as the whatever his name is.
Yep.
We've got Aronack.
Yep.
We've got Slannis floating around periodically. She probably has a real body somewhere that we don't know.
Sure.
The fifth god, the one that we know nothing about, whose name I can't remember, but
yes.
I thought Rafit. I thought interestingly, just a shot into Zendor, they mostly only worship the one who Aronack's trained to be, but they've got one other god that they allow, which is their fire god. And I'm like, okay, maybe Aronack's got some help.
Oh, the Smith or whatever.
Yeah, the one who is who is the bringer of fire. Yeah.
So maybe like this other god is like, I'm not going to break my oath directly, but he's cool with Aronack doing it. So he's just not going to personally do it.
I'm just not going to do it, or he's helping in some other subtle way, know.
Sure,
but clearly Aronack's trying to get Darus to listen to him. He's trying to convince the other gods.
Yeah. I would agree.
To behave. So I wouldn't be surprised if he'd already done it with one.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if Aronack nuked the Horde Watchers to be like, yo, Salonis, let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Enough with your pet project.
Yeah. This what is this?
Yeah. Well, that's interesting because that's what he went with the Shodel to go do up in the village too, was to drive Darus out. Like that was the other place he went.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do. So yeah. I don't think he's necessarily trying to get the others to listen to him. I think he's trying to get the others to break their oaths.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was not trying to convince Darus of anything other than act.
Well, and the father being an asshole. That seemed to be the undercurrent here.
I think that's also like, I don't think he was necessarily trying to convince him that the father was being bad. That was his, he was bad, forget about him, act.
Well, I think it does still like have this line to killing the father, right? Eventually.
Sure.
Can I talk a second about the Aronack's Shodel, which are not actually Shodel, which we get no resolution as to what they actually are?
Weird.
What is that?
I guess that's him, kind of the idea of, Zeth the Black created the original Shodel, maybe, and now Orion is doing the same thing.
Well, I mean, if the demigods did make the Shodel, then he could do that, but he made it in such a way that like they don't have actual Dragonsteel, and so like they just die, I guess.
Yeah, maybe he can't like fake create Dragonsteel.
Yeah, yeah. That might need some special things. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, here's a theory. It seems like what Frost does not want to have happen. What he says to Ethane in the beginning is like, I don't want you, like, you and the humans need to stop fighting each other because we need to have somebody around to face my brother or your brother when he eventually tries to destroy the world again. And so this could be him just trying to set up like an extinction. Like he's already sending an army there to try to destroy. Well, actually, never mind. They're going to Yolin, aren't they? They're not going to Shodel.
Going to Yolin, yeah.
I forgot about that. But anyway,
that's kind of cool.
He's sending in, he's like creating a fight between the humans and the Shodel that maybe leads to extinction. He's sending these people that look like Shodel, but they're actually humans to kind of to pick a fight so the humans will come down there and really end the Shodel. And that's the whole goal. And so maybe most of the Shodel we see, I'm still a little confused why the Shodel were trying to kill the king, aside from maybe they're trying to cut off lumber supplies, but like,
I don't know if any of those Shodel were
real.
I don't think any of those Shodel were actual Shodel. I think they're all whatever Aronack made.
I guess, but some of them were using the illusion magic, like they were using the Shodel type illusions to like sneak around,
Maybe they can still do that even if they are made by Aronack. I don't know.
Without their Temukek? With no Temukek?
Hard to say. Like, I really wish I really wanted just a line to give me anything about what the hell's going on there. Like, that would have helped. Because this ending's a lot happens in a very short amount of time in this book. Yeah. And Jerick, our main character, isn't even there. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know.
He's in the same kingdom, Eric. He's just in the wrong place.
Why aren't you satisfied? He's in the same kingdom. I mean, you're not wrong.
He would not have been able to do anything anyway.
That's true. He just would have gotten shot dead, honestly.
Honestly, maybe that's the rationalization that like Jerick would have just been murdered. And so Brandon, thinking series wise, is like, okay, I need an excuse. for Jerick to not just be killed because Aronack's here. He is going to just kill everyone, right? And
although he's got the Dawn Shard, maybe he would have just killed the new Call Lord right off the bat. Yeah, and they would have won. And they're like, haha, and now we know the name of Aronack. Let's go get him. But
I mean, Jerick doesn't know any of that stuff, right? Only Batroc does.
That's true. Maybe even there he would have met Topaz and he would have been like, hey, what's going on? You're not going to get executed.
Yeah. Jerick doesn't even know the language to read that.
No, Jerick knows nothing. That's just facts.
Except the things he notices, David. He notices things.
Before I picked up on what was going on, I was impressed that he figured out how buoyancy worked in boats. I was like, he's a smart little kid. Like, look at him go. And
I was like, this is. I'm glad
you can literally see it.
I'm glad that got explained because I wouldn't say I was frustrated with Jerick about that, but there's definitely like, oh yeah, this kid, he's just so good. He's the chosen one. Like,
huge chosen one energy.
Oh God. He's got to be the hero. Yeah, other history things, like Kachan going away. That's kind of interesting. Like turning into a desert. So I feel like probably some god thing happened there, and Aronack's gonna try and restore it, I guess.
I really liked the kind of decision he gave Bat Chor in the end, who we didn't talk about very much.
No, we haven't talked about him very much.
But I like the kind of like, hey, I know you don't want to work for me, but I will give you back like your historical kingdom for your people. Like that's a pretty compelling case to make, where you're like, oh man, like my duty to my people.
It was very unclear. It's like, wait, Bat Chor's the leader of the kingdom? Like, wait, what? Like that's a little. I don't quite. Okay, sure.
Brandon loves people who are secretly the leader of a kingdom. Rock is secretly king of the Horn Eaters. That's how it's worked out some way.
I speaking of Rock, it is wild how like I go into this reread and Brandon's saying, oh yeah, Rock, I had to invent the Horn Eaters because the Kachan are too important for Yolan still. Okay, sure. And then we realize Rock, not Kachan, he's a hybrid. So I mean, I guess he's still got that in modern Cosmere, he's still hybrid species or whatever, but not that Kachan are a different species, but they do seem to have some distinct physical characteristics here.
Mm-hmm.
But Rock is just like no personality at all. Like I'm Gab fan. Okay.
But he's a terrible name.
And he's just like
it's a terrible
name, and he's in the book too, guys. Like a lot of characters here, they're present, Yeah.
They exist.
Brandon has gotten a lot better with like making it clear who characters are that have a nickname too, because periodically I would be like, is Gabthan Rock? Like, because every now and then Jerick will just say Rock, and Gabthan is always called Gabthan. So
yeah. So Brandon's gotten a lot better, just in just so many aspects, and you can tell like so many of these ideas he's going to use later. Like clearly he's playing with interludes. He's loved that for a long time. And so he got to use interludes. So like that was, I did quite enjoy that here. Like that was nice to see some, like the scale of the world's so big. So I think interludes are good there. And yeah.
And now he uses them all the time, including in non-Cosmere stuff.
Well, just one in a Skyward book, one per part rather than three between every part.
Much more modest.
He's got a sense of proportion for sure.
Yes. But yeah, it was just funny. It's like, oh, okay, here's fake Sadius, here's fake Dalinar, but they're not called either of these. And we just kind of have that plot. And like, there's so many ideas here that if Brandon spends the time to really make them good, they can be great. So that's kind of the thing.
It's really interesting that fake Dalinar was so much less compelling of a character because we never saw like all of the Dalinar like the internal struggles and him as a character. He is just there is this general who is
pretty cool.
good at war and
He's
also good at being a person.
He's a good guy. He's good guy. Capital G, capital G.
He's good guy. Yeah,
good guy.
He's winning fights with Frost.
And also, and there is the other general who's bad at everything.
He's bad. This is this is the subtlety we want in a story. But
other than that, no history, no personality. I guess there's a little bit of a conflict of good general being like, oh, Aronack, who we as the reader know to be a villainous character, now wants me to go back and lead this war. So like there's a little bit of dramatic irony going on there.
I don't mind Zern. Like of characters to complain about, Zern's pretty low on the list for me here. Like he's fine. He's just not Dalinar, right? So like that's certainly true.
Yeah, I didn't realize that his second in command was his son-in-law for a good portion of it, and I'm like, oh, there. Whatever his name is, Sharn.
How could you forget Jerick's great brotherly relationship with Sharn that we got off screen?
That is, hey, he's proto-Adolin right there.
I guess. The thing is like Dalinar was actually from, I think, Brandon's first book, right?
Yeah.
But they were very original Dalinar. And then was in Way of Kings Prime. Yeah.
It's interesting. Like, did he consider this character to be Dalinar, or was this character merged with Dalinar?
I think it was merged. I think Shattered Plains was moved over. Dalinar was in Way of Kings Prime, and then this gave the plot. Like, he put Dalinar in that role, right? But is not like the character's different.
The person who gets betrayed and then gets saved by the main character, and then becomes, not quite a father figure, but like a mentor.
Yeah. And go ahead.
There wasn't that much personality to lose, You're just like, oh, here he is. Like,
I mean,
it's an empty glass that we're gonna pour some Dalinar in.
I mean, I think that's part of the thing, right? This is some of the older stuff, and so Brandon's looking back and like, okay, what's the concept? How can I execute this better? And it's like, okay, I think the concept could be good, and when you're better at the storytelling, you can just do that, right? So that's good. And
one character just was not at all, I think, the concepts that Brandon says, like, that they inspired. He says that Ryalla inspired Shallan, or that she's like proto-Shallan. And I'm just like, they're Lightweavers, that's about it. They're in totally different classes of life.
They're like shy for a lot of the time,
kind of. We don't know her backstory,
she's scholarly. Kind of, yeah. Parents dead.
Yeah.
As far as we know, like, it's not. They're so different, and I'm like, what are you even on? That this is
This is like the most base spiritual ideal. Like there's, or rather,
not even that. Like, this is not Shallan in any way. Like, he doesn't consider Shinri to be the same, but he does Ryalla.
Well, I haven't read Way of Kings Prime, so I couldn't tell you.
I haven't either. But like,
it might be more about like his mental path, like where he thought about the character, you know what I mean, as opposed to there being any true resemblance at this point, where like he's got this concept, and maybe even like a concept for where she was going to go, that might be more similar to Shallan, I mean, we plugged this character in a bunch of different roles, and she's changed so much that now she's basically a totally different character, but still in his mind, that's where the seed came from.
I think it's a seed more than anything.
We talked earlier that, if this had become a series, then Ryalla might go to Troxandos in the future. Which is kind of this proto-Carbrantian, place of scholarship island. And so that touches on, Shallan Way of Kings a little bit as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think.
Good point.
I think it's. There's probably things later in his series conception that like he's using maybe later ideas from Ryalla, kind of like that, where he's just like, let's cut out that early part. Let's just have her go to, Kharbranth and just start there, right?
Yeah. There's also the like the Hoid mentorship, right?
Yeah,
Topaz,
sure.
Yeah,
there's that.
There's and we're just seeing older Shallan rather than 13-year-old Shallan to start with, right? Well, I guess
we've seen 13-year-old Shallan,
but we didn't
the
start
same
there.
Either.
We didn't start there.
It's like totally different.
Look, if Gathbin can be Lunamore, then this can be Shallan.
I can definitely see how it's like, okay, there's this proto idea. It's a little amorphous, and then we put it in like a new book later. And like, I can see how it happened, mostly because I found something in my book that I'm like, wait, I had this base idea in 2007. I didn't even remember I had this idea then. Like, that's crazy. And I'm like, I don't even know what's going on there. So like, I can see it. It makes sense to me.
I guess.
Yeah. Cool. So, any final thoughts, guys?
Damn.
Will concede the floor to David.
Yeah, there you go. Nice. Good thought.
I ultimately am excited for the version of this book that eventually emerges, stripped of a ton of stuff, I'm sure. The thing that I'm most curious about from this book is like what elements will persist when eventually we do see Dragonsteel. What is core in Brandon's mind to this world? Which is obviously going to be like Shodell stuff, at least in part.
Absolutely.
And dragons.
They'll be there.
Yeah, like will Ryalla be in that? That's
what's going on with Jerick
or not? Like he's kind of if he views her as Shallan as being a successor character, maybe that's just not going to work for him. But I think if ultimately we kind of end up with a story where we get a cool Hoid is trying to figure things out story, which we kind of get here, that will be fun.
And then like leading to killing God, like that's
leading to killing God, and you're getting Raids popping up as an evil lord, and you're getting a Shodell who someone calls Ulida, and you're like, oh, here are the characters. Maybe we don't see them all up close.
And like this proto magic where we're seeing how the magic evolved, like in the mythology evolved and things. Oh, I guess there was this wob where Brandon talked about AonEne maybe having avatars, and so maybe these demigods are like avatars of AonEne. I meant to mention that as well, but
maybe they seem too autonomous for that.
Well, but what is it? Avatars, whatever Brandon wants an avatar to be.
That is true. That is true.
Fair.
Yeah, I do want to know if there will be gods though in Hoid's ultimate story. Like he's referred to Yolen as being a place where two lands meet and gods have died, and AonEne is a singular god, not plural.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. Yeah.
Maybe Aethers. Who even knows whether Aethers are going to be present there?
So yeah, stick some Aethers in there.
Yeah.
I feel like they won't be. I feel like he said that he kind of slotted them in for his like Lyre of Partenell draft just to see if they worked, and he was like, this could work, and now he's done something else. But it's possible. They seem to not like each other that much.
Yeah,
I think the final book will ultimately be very, very different in plot and lore, and probably also characters. Like it'll have a couple of things hanging over, and I think it'll be very different mostly.
Yep. I mean, I think Brandon has talked about wanting to one, downsize it to a trilogy, and two,
it's gonna be a trilogy.
Turn it into a Hoid POV, which means we're not going to have any of this Jerick stuff, or if Ryalla is in there, she's probably going to be a secondary character. I think the new version of Dragonsteel is going to be Hoid's origin story. Period.
I mean, the Hoid stuff's the best part of the book, so
can't be upset with that.
Can't complain.
No.
I think maybe the weirdest thing me rereading is how much I'm like, the concept of this book is crazy, how this is a school plot, and that's what we're going with. And then I'm like looking at the whole book, I'm like, part 2 is my favorite part of the book. Like it's actually like it's Vitelli, but like I do like that more, except like how dumb Jerick is at the end. That's I don't understand what's going on.
When I was talking about 3 books, there's one book that is the school stuff, and there's one book that is the war camp stuff. And there's one book that's like a lumberjack boy becomes something else and climbs in the world.
Yeah. We just end
and then there's Hoid and Batur doing their thing, and then there's Ryalla doing her thing, and there's all these other
but
the one mystery that I wish we had figured out was like the Shodell Dragonsteel relationship. Why do they have it in their bones? Why do they need it for reproduction?
I think it's kind of like thing that like it puts the women that they can reproduce, and they need Dragonsteel for it because like they need that magical essence or whatever.
They needed it to reach adulthood, and then once they had reached adulthood, they could reproduce. Was the thing there, I believe.
The way I read it was a cultural version of adulthood, not like physiological adulthood.
Oh, I definitely read it like Ian did. Like to me, it seemed like there were a group of people. They were like, you are going to run out of time if we don't raise you now. You're going to become one of these permanently like perma-child children.
They did say that she was running out of time.
Yeah, but I thought she was out there doing war and stuff.
Yeah, she's one of the magicians.
Yeah, so like she is an adult unless they're sending their children there.
I mean, I don't think she's like a kid. I think she's probably either mid to high teens or like something like a level of maturity that we might consider adult, but not whatever level that they hit that they call adults and that can reproduce for them.
I was thinking like an adolescent, you know, like she's just not gone through the final stage that would let her have children, but she's, you know, the intelligence of an adult, the abilities of an adult. And it
like, I could see her being 17, 18.
I think it just seems like they definitively need the Dragonsteel to reproduce. I don't know if male Shodel necessarily need the Dragonsteel, but I think it's like, I think you cannot have Shodel kids without it. And that seems pretty clear. It's interesting. Like maybe that's why Shodel haven't been able to spread across the Cosmere, right? If they like specifically need the Dragonsteel to reproduce, like that's a good explanation.
Maybe the Dragonsteel is the piece of Orion's power that the betrayer gave them. You know, maybe that's
actually really cool. I actually really like that.
I mean, not impossible, right? Although, you know, modern Cosmere, we do have, you know, Shodel. We have the Melan guide. We have Shodel up on that.
Yeah,
Jean Van. Yeah.
That'll be really fun to read the Shodel names. Yeah, hell yeah.
Which is also a Shodel name.
Yeah. Any other final thoughts? Anyone?
I hope we get more Bat Chor.
Yeah, I do want to see Bat Chor. Yeah. I do want to see Bat Chor.
Do not care about him.
I could do without him. Like this was enough of him for me.
Okay.
The whole idea of you initiate a fight by throwing your sandal.
Okay, yeah.
That was dumb.
But Brandon said that he couldn't port the Catan over to Roshar, so they're still important for Yolan somehow. Yeah, in his mind, I think Katan's going to be in there somehow. I don't know.
I don't think Brandon writes great like
other cultures,
big person stereotypes.
Oh,
yeah. The way that it was like, oh yeah, they start fights all the time. You just know that you don't mess with a Kachan, and they don't get mad at them or like lock them up normally for this because that's just them. I'm like,
that was really bizarre. That was
okay. Okay, interesting.
Okay,
I can imagine a version that's better than this. That's There's an interesting part of Batch.
There's just people that it's legal for people to punch, you know?
Yeah, that's, yikes. Yeah. Cool. Well, we must actually wrap here. So we hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll have, I don't know what our next episode's going to be, but so we'll see you in 2 weeks. We're rapidly approaching Wind of Truth. And so check out Wind and Truth sample chapters on our Discord or on 17char.com. Progress, news, discussion, theories, and fun you could ever want. You can, I already mentioned Discord, so I don't need to do that part. Subscribe on YouTube. You can find us on social medias. And tell us what you think of Dragonsteel Prime in the comments. And if you didn't read Dragonsteel Prime, I hope you enjoyed this episode too, because it's fun.
Tell us if you listened to this whole episode without having any idea.
People listen to White Sand and they're like, the only things I know about White Sand is your episode. So there's going to be people, and I appreciate that. So I hope you had fun.
Tell us what weird conclusions you came to from knowing only what we said and not knowing the actual book.
Yeah, good. And so we'll see you all next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Peace.
Ta.